What I think on the flip side of that belief, though, is what got someone else there won't get you there. So it is figuring out that balance of what got us here won't get us there. But if you deviate too far from that path, you're also not going to get there. So for entrepreneurs, founders, startups, you have to be so much more methodical than you think. And brute force will get you this far, and then strategy. That is the Darwinian side of it. You can be a very big animal for a very short time, big fish in a little pond, and then suddenly you jump into the next biggest pond and you're the littlest fish. Brute force isn't going to work anymore.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is Denny Burda, the CCO of River Consultancy Group. At River, they created a bespoke executive advisory agency that is like a business in a box. They built out a team of experts who can speak deeply into the challenges and opportunity that today's executives are facing and help them succeed with strategic programs and customized consultancy. Denny, so excited to have you on. How you doing today?
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. That was a nice lead in there. The full content. Appreciate the intro.
Of course, absolutely. And so excited to have you on. We always like to ask our entrepreneurs and our guests, tell us about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into what you're doing today?
Yeah, probably a long and strange journey compared to maybe some of your other guests. So straight out of university, I actually spent about the first 10 years of my career working in nonprofits, NGOs, things like that. Wrapping that up, actually, after about a decade, I was a project manager in the Church of England. So all over the place doing all sorts of things, and really love working directly with people, supporting people, encouraging people. And it was very rewarding work, just not financially. So once I hit my 30s and realized it'd be nice to move out of a studio apartment and things like that, I began my journey into the SaaS world. And I still remember my very first manager, when I kind of asked for feedback and how the interview went, I said, yeah, what got me the job? And they said, well, when you described your past experience, you said you were really good at herding cats. And they said that really translated well to kind of the customer-facing side of technology, because dealing with, you have to learn to speak developer, you have to learn to speak web page designer, you have to learn to speak the customer on the other end who may be a CIO, but actually doesn't even know how to turn on their microphone for a meeting, and everything in between. So if you can bring all that together, you'll do just fine here. And so that was the start of my journey. Like I said, it's been about a decade in SaaS. I was the first customer success manager at an event tech company that basically at the time ran pretty much every event Microsoft did. So if you attended a Microsoft event between about 2006 and onward, I was probably there somewhere. And that was the start of the journey. And after years, kind of worked my way up in the customer success community. I was started as a CSM, became a manager of CS, then a head of CS, then the international head of CS. And now I sit as CCO at River Consultancy with my partner, James, who was also my former boss at our last company. I had actually moved on to work for a company called Atlassian, who I still work for now, but I really wanted to start by wanting to support my friend. I really believed in James and what he was building with River. And it started by just helping with some content creation and a project here and there. And then I grew into, hey, would you take on a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more? And so maybe that's, for most entrepreneurs, that's really the way you get into it, is someone else kind of pulls you in to the spot. That got me here. And yeah, I've been CCO with River for probably about 14 months now, something around that.
Nice. That's some incredible experience, just having different industries, different positions that you've worked your way up into. But obviously they saw your value, everything that you brought to the table to be able to get these higher positions and then eventually lead other business leaders on what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right, and give them that higher level consultancy. Because I can tell you, for business owner, CEO, that as much as we feel like we have it all together, secretly we're all lost, right? We're all trying to figure it out. And maybe it's our pride that gets in the way. So you're helping them with a much needed service here. Are there certain industries that you like to work with?
Yeah. So our sweet spot, I think, coming from the tech side of things, is obviously SaaS. We work with SaaS founders, SaaS executives, and things like that. You actually bring up a great point, because I think it was a challenge when we first got started. We really had to refine what we do for a long time, because saying we're executive advisory is kind of the business acumen term of shooting yourself in the foot, because how many executives really want to be advised, especially when they meet me and I'm 10, 15 years younger than them, or when they meet me and they go, oh, you were a customer success guy, I'm a CIO, what could you possibly teach me? Or I'm a founder, have you ever founded anything? And I came to the realization not that long ago, I'd say probably in the past 6 months, I bet Phil Jackson played Michael Jordan one-on-one in basketball hundreds of times, maybe thousands across their career together. I'm guessing he beat him 0 times. And that's because what I've learned is to advise somebody, to coach somebody, to help somebody get the most out of themselves doesn't mean you have to be better than them at a thing. It means you have to have set kind of curriculum almost, or set courses that you're going through and walking through. And so that's kind of a bit of what we're building at River, is not things to say, hey, come listen to us in this sage, wizard, Gandalf-y sort of way as an advisor, but it's actually saying, hey, we're focused on the things that we believe will support you, or the things that will help you in an area, in a skill set. Not because we're better, sometimes because we've done that exact journey before, but because we're doing things that we believe are kind of tied and tested and true, and the things that work. To keep the coaching analogy going, if you're coaching Michael Jordan, you're coaching him on how to accelerate, bring the most, keep the foundational mechanics there, because when he wants to flip the switch, he does something else. If you're coaching Shaquille O'Neal, you're not going to waste your time teaching him to shoot free throws because you know he's never going to make them, right? So it's about what works with that executive and what works with that leader. As you said, we've worked with a lot of founders or executives of that in that startup scale-up space, and they were really good at something to get to the point that they could afford a consultant, basically. But that doesn't mean they're an expert at it. Some of the founders we deal with, they built their thing. They built their system. Sometimes from a technological tech stack point, they built that new AI program, or they built that new video conferencing system. They're incredibly smart technically. Don't ask me to build an AI tool for you. Not going to go well for anyone. But ask me how to develop your go-to-market strategy to support that AI tool, or ask me how to help you be a better communicator to the teams, because you're used to communicating with devs all day, not salespeople. So that's really where River's evolved into over the past year and a half. And it came from a lot of us trying to figure out all these ways to say, how can we help you? And them saying, no, I don't want your help. And maybe because my partner and I are just too stubborn to accept no thanks in a closed door, we kind of kept refining what we've done until we've kind of reached basically what is a very set amount of packages we offer. And I like to be pretty transparent. So I also admit those are basically Trojan horses into a lot more consultancy work a lot of the times, because we end up showing all these things and they go, that's great. I have no idea how to do that. And we say, well, us or one of our partners does. But that's also a bit of the consultancy game for anyone who's out there thinking it is have 2 things people want and 20 things they need.
Right, absolutely. But it makes sense to me to bring in that experience, because oftentimes the leaders, the CEOs, the founders, they have blind spots. We've only seen what we've seen. So to have an objective, neutral third party come in who has worked with many other founders and businesses, they're bringing all that experience, what worked, what didn't work, and then they can advise you on what direction you should take. So it's not like you need to go to the best basketball player or the best founder out there. You can learn a lot of those skill sets from other people as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I'm a big fan, and if you're on LinkedIn these days, you can't miss him. I'm a big fan of Adam Robinson most of the time, who's the founder of RB2B and retention.com. And the reason I'm a big fan is he's pretty good, bad, and ugly in what he shares about the journey. And one of the things he constantly shares is he speaks with other founders, other startup founders, and basically helps share the misery that they go into because they just looked at what the next, not even crazy out there, but they're not trying to emulate Bezos or Gates or Zuckerberg. They say, well, this company that a competitor of ours or like ours, or maybe just a few steps down the road, did X. So we do X, we'll be successful. But I can watch a pro athlete do something as many times as I want. Doesn't mean I'm going to achieve that level, because I didn't know everything that it took to get there. And so the biggest mistake I think a lot of startup founders, people entering entrepreneurship can make is going, well, I read X book, or I read X website, blog post, X TED Talk, and now I'm going to go and copy it. Because most of those very successful people, unless they're selling that specific book, TED Talk, will actually say the first piece of advice is, don't do what I did. Do what you need to do that's like what I did, which was figure it out for yourself. And so again, that's where having consultants, having people who are just there to ask those type of questions can be really beneficial to a business. And something I always like to say with River, very early on, we're fighting over, not fighting ourselves on what our vision statement or our mission statement would be. And we kept trying to say, River will be the greatest consultant, and 5 pages long, and you realize no one wants to read that. And we actually just red penned through all of it and said, our mission, our vision statement is let River help, which is something that we will always have to aspire to do, always aim to do. And so it's actually completely common. I meet with a lot of founders, hopeful entrepreneurs, and I say, look, I'm not going to give you a statement of work or an RFP till I think I can actually help you at a level that you can afford it. So I'm going to have as many free consults with you till I feel like we're there. So I'm actually helping this really awesome guy who's got a very cool AI powered, I don't want to say note taker. It's almost more of a insights gathering tool. Basically what it does is it takes recordings like this one that CSMs or sales reps or account managers or product managers have, and it pulls that all and it puts it into a really nice summary with actual insights, and it tracks over time what's a cool product, really sharp. But right now his company is him and two other people, and they're all working for free. So they can't afford my rate for our specific programs or ongoing actively working with them thing. So you know what? We meet about once a month and he buys me lunch and it gets us there. And the reason I believe in that is because I think someday that could be the next big tool, the next Salesforce Gainsight type of add-on, plug-in, parallel tool, the next Gong. And I want to see him succeed before I want to see him write me checks. And so that's a big part of who we are at River and what we're about. Doesn't mean we can do it all the time for everyone. If I helped everybody who said, hey, can you help us figure out our company? I wouldn't get any work done. I'd be poor very quickly. But we try to do that as much as we can for a starting point.
I love that. And I think it's important when building relationships. It's almost like you're assuming the risk a little bit, like, hey, I'm going to go to bat for you. As long as you're showing potential, I believe in what you have here. Because further down the line, yes, 6 months, 12 months from now, they could really hit it big. Maybe they get a big buyout, or you're helping to get them to that point. And similarly, I was curious more about like that go-to-market strategy, because there's a lot of people who are building small apps today or solving problems out there. And it's kind of within like a SaaS model, right? Or they're just solving problems. What should their go-to-market strategy be? How do they even start that process? They have a thing, but they need to tell people about it. Do they need to figure out who wants that thing? Or what does that process look like when you're working with people?
Yeah, I was about to say short answer, yes. But I think that, again, we're often interacting with people and it's crazy. You can think you have the best go-to-market strategy when you're sitting like this and you're in your own tunnel vision because you know your product, you know how great it is. You might have 3 customers, 30 customers, or 3,000 customers, and you know that tunnel so well, but you don't know how long it is or what's around it. The core of our go-to-market strategy is, I would say, maybe a philosophy. I wanted to call it a training, but I realized it was much more about now I sound like a hippie consultant guru, but a state of mind about how you approach what you're doing. And at the core of it, we call it Build the Cat. We're hopefully in the next month or two relaunching it as a program we call the CRO Strategy Lab, because we're finding we're working more with CROs and it's about getting the teams to align up to that. They don't necessarily want to hear how we're telling them to align down. So if we work up and then answer their needs, it's working better for us. But in the core of that, and the reason I call it the CRO Strategy Lab is this is definitely true for SaaS. I think it's probably true for most technology business. Also, if you're looking at AI as a service, most business, honestly, I think you could be selling cars on a used car lot and the philosophy applies. Most businesses built their entire foundation on sales. And the problem with sales is she's a very fickle lady. She is with you one minute and she's completely gone the next. And that's because the factors are external with sales. When you have a sales mindset, it's how do I sell something to Chris right now? How do I get money from you right now? And this is a position that came out of the SaaS world about 20 years ago with revenue. It's the idea of how do I keep you coming back, especially as things sell in subscription basis. And so that doesn't matter if you're AWS selling year-long, multi-year deals for cloud hosting, or if you're OpenAI selling month to month, or Netflix trying to keep you from switching to Apple TV. You're asking that question, how do I retain and recur this revenue? And the biggest difference in that shift is people are realizing sales tactics don't work and marketing tactics for that don't work because they cost a lot of money. So it's the old spend money to make money adage. When you start thinking in a revenue mindset, you realize that the best source of revenue is the one you already have. And so you can grow a business. If I'm a baker selling bread and I have 10 loyal customers and I want to grow, I'm not going to do the most financially sound thing if I say, great, I have 10 customers, I sell 10 loaves of bread today. I'm going to just start making 20 loaves and I'm going to tell people I've got 10 extra loaves, right? That's built on this idea that you're hoping 10 new people come in. But if I start talking to the 10 customers I have and say, hey, what breads would you like to see? You come in once a week, is my bread going stale? And I start really building out of this. And this is nothing new, having customer-driven growth, product-led growth, things like that. But it's a real shift in mindset to say, that's what I'm building off of versus that's what I hope to be. And you foundationally build that. And then you say, hey, by the way, I'd really like to sell 20 loaves of bread a day instead of my 10. Do you know anyone else who needs bread? And you get that referral-led growth and you start building that. And then you build a system and you go, okay, I need to hire somebody else who's really good at selling the bread so I can focus on making it. Or I really need to get somebody who's really good at describing my bread because I just call it bread and they call it a honey ciabatta loaf with a, balsamic drizzle or something like that. That's really what we're about and what we build from a go-to-market strategy. So when we consult and when we do this, we say in this new package, hey, CRO, what matters to you? And within our package, we've identified really what we think are the 12 most important or at least most common metrics that align up to CROs. And so there are things like ARR, NRR, they want to know churn rate, they want to know pipeline, all those sort of things. But what's amazing is, and I'm not trying to bash any CROs out here, but a lot of these CROs came from either they were a VP of sales or a VP of marketing. We're starting to see more come out of the customer success world, but they know their tunnel. And so they go, okay, I'm a CRO. I need to increase revenue. I'm going to increase sales. And then they might have twice the pipeline of their predecessor, but the cost is also twice as high. And then the conversion rates are not hitting what the projections hit, or they're realizing that the quality of pipeline is not what they were in there. So then they chase the marketing person. They go, help me figure this out. Or they chase the customer success team and they say, what's working? But usually by the time a leader's in that position that they're chasing down, they're about to need to start polishing their resume because whether they're reporting into a CEO or a founder or a board, that window for what brings in value is very short. I think the last stat I saw on this is the average lifetime of a CRO at a company is around 18 months. It's a broad spectrum, obviously. That could be from a startup that closes in 18 months to going into some of the largest companies in the world. And you worked your way up, like I said, from VP of something to that chief, usually a first or second chief position. And usually see a lot of people go from like CRO to maybe a COO to a CEO or things like that. But they're jumping from VP of to that position. And it's just a different ballgame. And they need to be able to remove the tunnel and say, okay, revenue is all of it. And so go-to-market strategy for us is really building out that internal alignment up and saying, hey, churn is not a customer success problem. Churn is a company problem because churn means money's leaving the door. Churn can also be a good thing if it teaches you something. Hey, the number of qualified leads or the amount of money spent on marketing is not a marketing problem. It is a company problem or a company solution, because if you say, we want to expand, if you're in the US and you want business in Canada, and you think the solve for that is, okay, I'm going to hire some Canadian reps and run some marketing events in Canada, tough news for you. It's probably not going to work, or if it works, the actual revenue gain from that in the first year or two against the spend is going to be minuscule. But if you say, hey, we have 14 customers in Canada already, I'm going to go talk to the team that's working directly with them, whether that's customer success or support, or maybe you happen to have two A's who speak Canadian, and they give the insights to marketing, and marketing says, oh, we were attempting to come in and talk about this, but from what we understand, the client base in Canada is all about this, or if it's a new industry, is all about this. That can completely change your marketing strategy. And sometimes way for the better. An example of that is I recently helped a founder who was basically, it was me talking to the founder and their newly hired CMO. And they just said, hey, will you review our marketing side of go-to-market? And I reviewed it. I said, this looks really fun. It looks really exciting. It's going to cost you a lot of money and put you out of business in about 6 months. And the marketing person wasn't happy with me at first, but they said, what are you talking about? I haven't heard a reference to a single existing customer once. And they're a medium-sized company, I think around 75 customers or something like that. I don't see anything in here that tells me you know anything about your existing base. So how are you going to get a new one? And I said, go back, ask these set of questions to the people working with your existing customers, to the support team solving the problems of these existing customers. And I said, come back and just share with me what's changed. And I said, I'll give you 2 weeks and I'll check back in. 2 weeks later, completely different marketing plan. And I said, what changed? And they went, everything, because we decided to build off of what we had into our new markets, then into our new markets off of what we think we had. And that's kind of go to market at its basis. It's not magic. It's also not rocket science. It's just habit and practice and a bit of common sense.
Absolutely. I love that strategy, and especially the analogy when it comes to the baker with baking the bread. It's ask your current customers, what are they looking for? Maybe you don't have the bread that they're looking for, the upsells that they may be interested in. And unfortunately, it is kind of a crazy thing to say, is ask your customers and do exactly what they want. Because unfortunately, in the world of big business right now, it feels like they're removing features and benefits and raising the prices and doing the exact opposite of what the customers are asking. But I think that's an opportunity for the smaller and medium-sized businesses as well.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a part of scale. That's the challenge. I mentioned earlier, I also work for Atlassian. And the reason I still do is, and apologies, forewarning, trigger warning, I'm about to swear on your show. They have 5 core values. And the one that made me take the job there was their first core value, which is don't fuck the customer. And I loved it. I literally took the Atlassian offer over 2 higher paying, higher title jobs because I went, yes, this. And what I love about it is not that it sounds cool, but it does. The reason I took it is because it's impossible. At scale, it's absolutely impossible, but it's 100% aspirational. And the Atlassians, the Salesforces, the Google, they can't make one decision for the good of one customer without it hurting another. Like you, eventually at scale, you will hit that. And we all complain that Netflix is putting in ads and raised your subscription to $2 a month. There's probably reasons behind that. It's probably not Scrooge McDuck trying to dive into a deeper gold pit sometimes. It's not always evil corporation. Sometimes it is, frankly, but it's not usually, especially in that medium to growing scale. They're making the decisions to say, how do we invest in R&D or how do we do that? Now, when you find out that the executives golden parachute when they sold the company and made 10 figures and are living on a private island, there's some of that. But for most business owners, most of the executives I talk to, they're trying to make scale decisions that help their company grow. But as you said, that's the real opportunity for entrepreneurs right now is going, you know what? I can't beat Microsoft at their own game. The sheer amount of R&D there just built the world's first quantum computer. You're not going to compete with that. But what you can say is, I'm building this tool that Microsoft also does, but I know 10 customers that would happily pay me a fraction of the cost of what they're paying for this with Microsoft. And then you scale it to 20, and then you scale it to 30, and you do that in a way that makes sense. I feel like you should be paying me for this because I'm going to reference Adam Robinson again. He won't be paying me for this, but I feel like he should. If you're listening, Adam, I'll send you my link to my bank account. But Adam, he's pretty honest. Our B2B is about, I think, a year publicly on the marketing going, and he scaled it to 5 million. And in the world of SaaS, I don't want to say nothing, still 5 million, but it's not impressive. If you tell me you have a $5 million SaaS company, I say, good, you can almost afford my services most of the time. How he's did it, or how he's done it, is incredibly lean sales. I think he has 1 sales rep for the whole company. So that sales rep brought in 5 million. Granted, they also do really good funnel and flywheel and the motions and things like that. So it's not one salesperson who sold 5 million, but they built a company that brings in its own revenue and they grew that model. And then they brought in 1 person to start pursuing bigger deals, and that person's crushing it. And they post everything they're doing on how they're getting these deals in. He invested smartly in the tool stack he needs. He didn't just shotgun strategy and buy every AI on the market. He bought the ones that he tried and tested and knew when. And I forget how big they are, but I think they're a company of like a dozen, maybe a bit more now. And for 12 people to make 5 million ARR and growing is huge. Now, I'd love more time to actually speak to him and tell him how I think he's kneecapping himself a bit and why I don't think B2B will make it much past 5 million at the same pace they're going. I think they will over time, but that's because I think they're a maturing, evolving organization and they need to hit that scale level of customer success now and not just lean sales, lean support, and hope people keep buying. But again, all of this is those little things that feed into go to market. So if you're an entrepreneur out there, if you're a founder, you know what? If I said, hey, do you want to run a 5 million ARR company? Most would probably say yes. And if I said, hey, do you want to figure out how to do it with a dozen or less people? It's a hell yes. And some of them might be saying that same thing, but they have 50 people on staff already. And that's going to mean, okay, do we scale down to grow, or do we put a plan in place to actually support these 50 people under our employment? And those are also the questions and the situations I like to insert myself in, because I'd much rather help a company figure out how quickly they can grow to support the 50 people that they probably shouldn't have hired yet, than miraculously patting ourselves on the back because we helped 5 guys become millionaires, 5 single millionaires each, things like that.
Right, absolutely. And the strategy and the execution that you put into place from where you're growing from 0 to 100 to your first million to 5 million, there's different things that take place in there. So it's something you need to consider. What got you to that 5 million will not get you your next 5 million. It's just going to be totally different. And these are all great tips and tricks for people to be following.
And again, I really should have called in some referral fees before I took this interview if I'd known it was going this way. Winning by Design. I don't know if you've heard it or not. Jaco is a fellow Dutchie. A year and a half, 2 years ago, when I first saw the bow tie model, and I went, yes, this nerd has done all the data to everything I've been trying to put into process for people for years. And I can tell people this. And a lot of the first interactions, first people we worked with were people who were addicted to winning by design because data's there and the numbers there. And if you're trying to grow from that 100 to 1,000, winning by design has the playbook. Forgive me, Jaco, I'm going to say this. You don't even need to buy his $100 book because he's really good about posting it all on LinkedIn and all of the WBD minions. So you can literally just do a LinkedIn search and get all the information you need to start this if you're trying to get your first million side and can't afford a $100 book. But I love it because it's systematic and it's brilliant. And it very much speaks to that same thing. Like, what got you here won't get you there. What I think on the flip side of that belief, though, is what got someone else there won't get you there. So it is figuring out that balance of what got us here won't get us there. But if you deviate too far from that path, you're also not going to get there. So for entrepreneurs, founders, startups, you have to be so much more methodical than you think. And brute force will get you this far, and then strategy. That is the Darwinian side of it. You can be a very big animal for a very short time, big fish in a little pond, and then suddenly you jump into the next biggest pond and you're the littlest fish. Brute force isn't going to work anymore. Again, this is the more chatty side of what I help people with week in and week out at these type of conversations.
And I love that because our audience is based of many of the people that you help and those who are interested in connecting with you online. How do they find you and get connected with you?
Yeah, so super easy because it's where we all live and breathe these days. I'm on LinkedIn. If you search Denny Burda, DENNYBURDA, I think my LinkedIn is actually just in Flash Denny Burda. So easy enough there. Always happy to connect. You can also reach out to us, River Consultancy Group. Super annoying long name. I wanted RCG, but somebody beat me to it. But riverconsultancygroup.com or .co.uk will take you to our website. You can fill out a form there and request just that pre-first consult. And like I said, I'm pretty happy to meet and speak with people because you never know who you get to help next. I'm not in this business to go help Mark Zuckerberg, but I'd love to help. That's kind of what we aim to do. So check us out there. If your background's customer success or you're just really interested in customer success and revenue, we're also the strategic partners of CS Connect, which is a great community, mostly based over here in Europe, but constantly growing and expanding. And we put out a lot of great free content through them as well.
Nice. That's wonderful. And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description for everybody here. Denny, we have one more question before we sign off here. Wanted to ask, we're about halfway through 2025. Do you have anything exciting or new product launches or things that you're looking forward to in 2025? Or are you just kind of sticking with everything that's been working for you consistently already?
Nope, completely change it. I'll say that this way, evolving what we do. As I spoke about earlier in the podcast, it started with Build the Cat, which stands for Customer Account Team, and having that methodology. And we're now evolving it. We're just about to launch our package called the CRO Strategy Lab, which is really more about helping that CRO strategy run across all of your go-to-market teams. And the other product we're building out to launch, hopefully before 2025 is up, as long as I can pull some late nights and get the content built. We're also really designing a program specifically for entrepreneurs, for founders who are looking to move those stages from maybe seed funding, angel funding to Series A to B, B to C, and inversely for PE firms, VC firms, investors who are looking to know how good it is. And we're actually going to call it the Funding Health Check. And I mentioned we're part of a partnership group. We work with about a half a dozen other amazing consultants who specialize in employee engagement and neurodiversity or executive coaching or program and project management and service management. And we work with that network of consultants to do what I would consider a hypochondriac level health check of your business, which is looking at all these aspects and really giving them a fair rating and how we think that'll affect your ability to grow as a business. So that's also going to be hopefully launching before end of 2025 for our different customers and different groups we work with.
That is very exciting. It's a smart pivot. You're meeting the customers where they are and just kind of figuring out what services and proposals are going to best fit them and serve their need. So I love that. Very excited for you with 2025 here. Congratulations on everything you've done. We appreciate you sharing your tips and tricks. And make sure for all those who are interested, check out the links below so you get connected with Denny Burda here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. This was an absolute pleasure.
Here, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. We'll talk soon.